Hey everyone, welcome to the ComicBase Livestream, and welcome to yet another sound check version of the whole thing. We're gonna get that intro music dialed in one of these days. Swear to God. Anyway, how's everyone doing out there? This is going to be the special viewer questions edition of the live stream. I'm your host, by the way. I'm Pete Bickford. I'm the guy responsible for, comic base in general, and probably other things. But anyway, welcome everyone here, and I'm going to try to get my video wired up here. If not, I'm going to be staring into my other monitor, and it's going to be a really strange show for me. But anyway, welcome everyone. All right, so let's see here. First of all, I want to say hi to folks. Hello, Fred's first in the house here. Aloha. Oro Viejo from out in Minneapolis. Andre is in the house. Ed Billiot, Xanadu Comics. Greg Heck is our moderator here, and so forth. And we're going to take the rest from here. So there is a little bit of comic-based news I want to get to, and then after that, I want to get straight into questions that people have sent in, the people that pose in the chat. So please, if you have a question you'd like to hit during the show, please post it to the live chat at ComicBase TV, and I'm going to hit as many of these as I possibly can. And we'll take it from there. And for some reason, I've just lost the lost the video on my other machine. So that's a good time. We might have a brief moment while I try to mess with that, but give me just a sec here, guys. All right, so you know what? Talk amongst yourselves for just a second. I'm just going to restart a machine. I'll be right back. Oh, here we are, professionalism all the way, guys. That's what you've come to expect from this broadcast, and nothing that I would ever dare disillusion of you of. Hey, that my goodness, that actually worked. So on the back side of things that you guys cannot see is I just got a new demo machine in. The last one was Bob. That was the $129 Ken something that small even run ComicBase laptop. The new one is Stuart. We'll flip over to them. And that one is actually based on, well, it's like, what if I spent double the money? And they actually like a whole almost $300 to get a PC in there to run ComicBase. And this thing has been live running ComicBase for all of about 25 minutes now. And so far, I'm going to say it's working pretty good. If it keeps working pretty good, it's going to be the machine that we demo ComicBase on for the entire show. So wish me luck, guys, because that's what we're going to do. All right, so getting back to things, and let me just go ahead and kick off that. All right. So if you guys have questions, please. Oh, yes. Armand says, of course, welcome to the ComicBase Livestream, everyone. You can always expect top-notch production values. It's kind of our whole... It's entirely our brand, really, when you think about it. So, we like to stick with that. But hello, everyone, to Ed out there as well. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to go with the questions people send me. By the way, and I'm going to get this out of the way ahead of time. There's also a dedicated ComicBase live stream message thread. So if you haven't gotten your questions in any other way, please feel free to post them on the board. But for the purpose of this one, I'm going to try to prioritize things that people actually send in the chat. So at ComicBase TV, if anything's on your mind about comics, the state of the world, romantic relationships, whatever you've got, I will do my best to bluster my way through that one. But in the meantime, let's get on to things. And the first one came to me from a user, and it's basically, how do I get a hold of, and then he named a strange query of, what do you want to do? But I figured this gives an excuse to get into custom reporting in general. So as most of you guys know, in ComicBase, you can go up here under the report menu, and there's a whole bunch of reports. Let me go ahead and kick on magnifier here on this new machine. Yep, there we go. Okay, and go ahead and hide that. So if you go up under the report menu here, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. There's collection overviews, divider labels, different, price labels, top gainers and losers, wanted lists, you name it, a whole bunch of stuff. But the main thing that is really, really useful for folks is just, hey, give me, I'm looking for just whatever's on my mind. I want to find comics by Art Adams. I want to find, different appearances of Batman, whatever the thing is, and I want to report of that thing. So let's go ahead and just do a couple of these ones here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click over here on Find. And let's just start with let's pick an item field like I don't know what are some comic books that are worth more than $50,000 that exist in the universe. So let's go ahead and go down to scrolling down to price, and let's find all the comic books that ComicBase knows about that are worth more than 50 grand. So price is greater than 50000. Whoops. 50000. Okay. And I'm not going to list only items in stock because we don't have any. All right. So here's a big list of very expensive comic books, which you could, if you happen to have these, it's as good as lottery tickets now. All right. So if I want to do a report of these guys, we have a routine built in called quick reporting. Now, this is not obviously a standard report. This is, comics greater than 50 grand. But what you can do is if you right click and you go down and you say quick report, or another way to do that is go F7, then it's going to give you a list of whatever you've just found. Now, if you selected any of those ones, it'll give you a list of just those. If you select all of them, it'll give you a list of everything on your screen. Or if you haven't selected anything at all, it'll give you a list of everything on the screen. So let me go ahead and do that. And so there we are. Here's a list of all those comics and so forth. Now, another way you could go about all this one, you don't have to just do reports, right? So sometimes you just want to see the list, and maybe I need to give that list to my accountant, or in this case, I believe it was somebody who just had an insurance loss, and they wanted to see just a list of things that had been in box 23 or something. So he did a find for my box number was number 23, and then he wanted to give that as a list to his insurance guy. So what I would do at that point is you could actually just highlight any number of rows or columns in the thing right there, and if you copy those, so Control-C copy, and then if you go to over to another program like Excel or a word processor or whatever else, and you simply paste whatever you copied there, it'll appear over there in a nice, beautifully formatted list of things. And that's really nice way of going and giving people a particular subsection of the stuff you've got. You can further tailor that by choosing just which columns you're interested in seeing down here from the list under the titles and so forth. You can see go under setup and then columns to view. You don't need to show them everything. Like, let's say you don't want to show them your cost, just uncheck cost. And then when you copy and paste that stuff, you'll notice that cost is not one of the things it's going to show. And so that's a good way of quickly generating kind of like your own ad hoc custom reports just to give to people. And finally, I want to give you another one that's very handy. Is it's a tool which we brought in from a program called TouchBase, was where originally this came from. It was a very simple, very early Mac database program, which was just elegant. It was just beautifully designed. But it had a feature there called Mark. And what you would do there is anything that was interesting to you at any given moment. And let's say I want to just find all those comics that are worth more than $50,000. If I select all on those guys and then go down under here and I say Mark, at that point, I've now set these up so that let me see, I think there's a marked field I can see over here. If I scroll to the right, if I can see my cursor. Yeah, so you see this little checkbox field over here. That's your marked field. And so now, if I want to take anything at all in the database after I've gone and I've done any kind of selection, or I've been working with it or wherever else, and then if I want to go ahead and do any one of my major reports, like let's say I want to do a collection report, but only actually let's say I want to do an item checklist, but only for the marked issues. Yeah, so I can click down here, and if I say list only the marked issues, then it's going to do an item checklist, but only of those particular things. And that winds up being a pretty useful way to go. And furthermore, you can go ahead and not just do reporting on it, but you also can go, if you have the Pro editions or better, you can say export, and you can also say that you also want to export only items in stock or whatever else, and take it from there. And maybe that's something that is is of interest to you. Okay. Let's see. Oh, and I got some comments says the volume is good, and I'll hinge the wrench match. Oh, okay, all right. So we got that going on in the whole thing. So all right, hopefully we covered that one. if you guys have other questions about how to get data in and out using the kind of specialized reporting, let me know. One thing I tend to do here, if you guys are all willing to hang with it, is I'm going to probably over-explain every darn thing I do today, just because if you have seen some of these tricks before, I want ideally you get something new out of it. So that's what we're doing here. All right, next question I had is, hey, I want to save a report, but I want to save as a PDF. How do I do that? Well, okay, number of different ways you can go about that. So let's take any old report here, and I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just going to add a few things to my inventory on this here. This is a brand new database, so I'm just going to randomly go down, put some things in stock. And by the way, bonus tip, what I'm doing here is I'm just highlighting down a list of lines. I'm punching the 1 key on my keyboard, and that says that for all those ones I just highlighted, I'm saying quantity is 1. All right. So now when I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to say do my collection statistics and say, here's everything that we have in stock on this new database. Great. I've just added 21 comics worth $139.25 is in stock. So now I've got some basis for doing some reporting. All right. So I'm going to go under here and let's just take annual report. I'm going to start with like a collection report here. And I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do it on the series I own. And yeah, nothing special. Let's go ahead and instead of printing it right now, if I print it rolls off my printer, I'm just going to say preview. And so here's what that report looks like. Okay. So that's all pretty. But how would I save this as a PDF? Now, a couple of different ways I could have done this one. So if on my printer, and let's go back to that report here. If you look here at the upper right-hand corner, it shows you what printer you're printing to. Now, a lot of times, built into Windows, there's the Microsoft Print to PDF, or sometimes the Acrobat PDF, which is basically a fake printer built right into your built in your computer. So it basically images it as if it were a real laser writer or something like that. But what it will do in the end is it will save it as a PDF format. So if you simply choose Microsoft Print to PDF and say print, then the thing that's going to come out at the end of the day is it'll ask you to say, oh, give me a file name, and I will go ahead and save this. And so there we go. It says, all right, what do you want to save your output as? And I'm going to call it, my collection.pdf and hit go. And then if I go and have a look at my desktop, here's my collection right there. And I guess, does Edge open PDFs? I guess it does. And so there's a PDF right there. Another way you can go if you don't have any PDF printers installed, because these are basically special, they're fake printers, right? They're not, it's not a real printer attached to your computer. It's just one that's built into Windows or built into, if you have the Adobe suite, that will automatically generate PDFs when you say to print. But another way you can go is, let's say you're printing just to a regular printer, is if instead of printing, you say preview, and then up here at these upper left-hand corner, there's some very, very badly drawn icons. These are the lovely folks over at SAP did these ones. And you can say export report, and you can export it in a variety of fun formats, almost all of which are useless. The default one is as a crystal report, but you also can export it as an Excel, data and so forth. Honestly, the one that I would ever use on this one for any kind of report is just PDF, in which case you'd say, my report .pdf, hit go, and in no time flat, it will take whatever you were about to image in that report, it'll save as a PDF, whether you had a PDF printer driver or not. And so here's what that looks like. And again, it looks exactly as you'd expect. Okay. All right. I'm just going to ignore the my collection. All right. Okay. Next question. And that is, all right. Gosh, I should really write down the folks who asked these ones. I want to say Mark, but somebody. But anyway, basically, I've got a comic you don't have. How do I add it? So what the person in question was asking about, was you're saying, hey, I've got this very obscure comic book. It's could have been something I picked up as a special promo for going to a certain panel at Comic-Con, whatever the thing is. I can't find it in ComicBase. How do I add it to the database? All right, so as usual, I'm going to answer it with way too much data. So the first thing I would say for all this stuff is, unless this is like a genuinely strange comic book, as in something that my kid's kindergarten class put out, or I got it on a trip to Belgium. It was of limited distribution back in 1953 or something like that. If it's a mainline U.S. comic book, overwhelmingly they're already in the database. So if you can't find it, the question mostly ask yourself is like, okay, look, this is like the king size special from the Incredible Hulk or something. I should be able to find this. In which case, do some digging around, and I'm going to give you some tips on the digging around part. So if we go up here to the top, the first way you look for anything is you just looking around the database. First of all, if it has a barcode on it, just put the barcode in. It'll take you straight there, one and done. It's the easiest way to find anything that's ambiguously titled. But let's say it's something like fantastic, king size Fantastic Four, something like that. So what you would do is you'd say something like, all right, I'm going to type in Fantastic Four, and and you'll figure out, okay, so this is the Fantastic Four that ran from 61 to 1996. It's clearly, the 1964 king size edition is clearly in there somewhere. And you say go, and some basic things that people don't know about is, okay, for instance, when you go to a particular title, all the regular issues are listed up top, but down at the bottom of the listing are all the weird ones. So that's where you'll see things that say like annuals and so forth. And in this particular case, it's I think this one actually is called Fantastic Four Annual, but like the early annuals for like Incredible Hulk and so forth were called like the king sized Incredible Hulk and so forth. You'll see those listed down here under the bottom of the title, the regular title that they're listed in. Later on, you'll also see books. Books, when you see something with BK, that's typically an abbreviation for us that says this collects one or more issues of the series. Other abbreviations are interesting. ASH over here, that's AshCam Previews. AshCams are kind of an interesting historical thing for comic books, where back before, I believe, 1972, in order to register a copyright, in order to have copyright is now these days just assumed by the act of creation. So, sorry about that. But before that, up to about 1972, I believe, you typically had to register copyright for it to be assumed to be valid. And one way that publishers would make sure that they had registration for both their copyrights and their trademarks is they would come up with basically just stapled together, if they had to, something that had the trademark they wanted on the finished work, and they'd just file it with the Copyright Office, even if they weren't ready to do it yet. One of the famous ones of this, by the way, is Action Comics, which, if you well know, Action Comics #1 is the first appearance of Superman. Check out Action Comics 1/Ash down here. This is a really unique item. I go ahead and pull it up here. Which is, and you can see the staple marks on it. It has nothing to do with the Action Comics that came out. It was literally whatever art they had laying around the office over at DC back at the time, but they had to run it down and get it. It doesn't have the same logo, or it just it was basically everything they had to do in order to get the trademark and copyright for Action Comics registered before some competitor could come out and and label their series Action Comics ahead of time. But like I say, none of the stories are the same as the real Action Comics. There's 2 copies of this one thought to exist, by the way, and if you do have it, it's worth a ton of money. But anyway, ash cans are interesting. These days, people put out ash cans typically when they're not quite ready to put out the real series. Like, maybe they've done like the first 8 pages of the story and they're still working on it, but a big convention's coming up, and so they really want to be able to advertise it somehow. So ash cans are one of the abbreviations that comes up a lot. Books are another. DLXs, that's stands for Deluxe Edition. That's typically if they've done a number of books and then they do another set that has even more material bound in this whole thing. SE is typically for Special Edition. And so if you see things like Action Comics Special Edition, that's a good way to find it over here. And anyway, those things are all found under the titles themselves. A lot of times you can find these things if you just start typing for the thing in question. One thing that we did recently in ComicBase is we added more cross-referencing, so that if you just start typing, it was like the Avengers, the Korvac saga or something. You'll, for instance, the Korvac saga is not really its own title. Actually, I think later on they eventually did make it its own title. But you'll also see that if you type certain things, they'll say named items in other titles as you go. at which point it'll find some of these special editions which bear some of these subtitles on them, but which aren't really officially designated as that as a title. So, that helps. So, for instance, yes, Avengers Book 3 or Book 3 Second Reprint is also known as the Korvac Saga, because if you looked at it and you're just staring at the front page of it, you'd see that the big type on the front is the Avengers, the Korvac Saga, but really all this is a reprinting of Avengers number 167, 168, 170 through 177, and so forth. So that's why it's listed as Book 3 under the Avengers as well. Anyway, so that is the first sort of thing I would suggest for people is, if you can't find a particular book or a particular item in the database, futz around a little bit. Look around in the particular title. If you see titles where the date range seems to match, scroll down a little bit, see if you can find by its cover date or whatever else. Because a lot of times comic books are weird. A lot of times they won't really bear the obvious designation. And even though we try to manage that and give you different ways of finding things, sometimes a little bit of hunting around is necessary. If you do have a barcode, obviously, I'd say that's my number one go-to for solving all the ambiguous title issues. But if it doesn't have a barcode, do some digging around. And when you're digging around, I would say always look for the weirdest word in the title. So, for instance, if I'd looked for Avengers, the Korvac Saga, like I just typed in Avengers, I'm going to find 150 different titles for Avengers. But if the word Korvac appears relatively in small numbers of times, same thing goes for anything involving Spider-Man, anything involving Batman, and so forth. If it's something like Death Comes to Bloodhaven, put in Bloodhaven, and it'll find everything involving Bloodhaven. Don't put in Batman, because Batman finds too many results. So I'd say that's the best thing I would do to find things in general. All right, so now on to the actual question the poor guy asks. He says, look, I've got something you don't have. All right, how do I add it? Okay, so, and this, by the way, is the way that ComicBase used to work in general for everybody, because we didn't used to put out updates once a week, like we do these days. If you've got a title that is brand new and you just want to add it to the system, you'd come up under here, so pick the title, the type of thing it is, whether it's a book, a comic book, a magazine, newspaper, etc. Let's say it's a comic book right now. Right next to that, you'll see is a little new comic book icon right there. So just go ahead and type new comic book, and let's give it a name. So let's call it, Death Comes to Nashville. And capital C, because, darn it, case is important. All right, and then it's going to say, all right, that's a new title here. Who publishes? I'm going to say that sounds like a image title. Sure. All right, and that's all I'm required to fill out is every title has to have at least a name and a publisher, but you can fill out other things if you want. Now, once you've done that, it'll bring you to the issue entry screen, and you say, all right, how many issues was this? And I say this is a 4-issue miniseries. So I'm going to put in issues 1 through 4 right now. Cover price was, let's call it $3.99 each. As soon as I fill that out, it's going to say, okay, it was probably worth $3.99 throughout its history. It's worth $3.99 now. If I put in a cover date and it's monthly, it'll increment the cover dates as I go. I could put in any kind of creator credits, whatever I want. But let's say for right now, that's all I really want to fill out. Hit save, go, boom, there's all 4 issues. And because I said quantity 1 for each one of them, it put all 4 of them in stock right now. So that's how I would add a new issue. Now, if I had another issue of the same title, I wanted to add that very quickly. Let's say issue 5 just dropped. If you come over here at the far right, you see this little tiny plus and minus. If I hit plus here, it's going to say, oh, hey, let's just go ahead and add the next issue to the series I was just working on. So then it's going to say Death Comes to Nashville number 5. And it's going to assume that it's, it's 1 month past whatever the last one was. And it's going to assume that it's, one past the regular issue. So it's issue number 5 now. It's still same cover price, still selling price. And so I can just hit plus, hit save, boom, there's issue number 5. Okay, so that's where we go. And let's see here. Someone say they're getting a lag on audio video. I don't know, guys. Don't know. Anyway, you could try streaming. Well, try just I don't know, launch the connection, drop it again. Maybe the YouTube will get a little better. Just one of those weird StreamYard things. Sometimes it happens. All right. So that's how you would add a new thing. And lastly, I'd say if you find yourself adding a new series, very, very, very much appreciated if you do this. So let's say you have a brand new title, it's a Kickstarter or something like that, somehow is not in our database and you just added it. Please highlight all the issues that you just added of that new series, right click, and then say, I'll zoom in so you can see it better, submit new or corrected data. Because if you do that, then it sends all that information to our editors, and then they can add it to the master database. And at that point, then everyone else gets it. They get the benefit of your experience. So then, instead of them looking around saying, "Hey, where's Death Comes to National number 3? I've got it right here in front of me." Then they'll have it. It'll be part of ComicBase, and we'll push that in the next weekly update, and we'll give you, points for that, and so you can brag your way to the top of the board. But that it's just one of those cool things that just makes everything better for everyone. So please do that if you do find yourself adding new issues. All right. Let's see. Let me check the chat real quickly. Okay, yeah, a couple people with some lag, but yeah, I think we're okay. All right. Greg Hecht wants to say, if you have mainstream comic books, something from Marvel, DC, etc., and you can't find it, a good chance it is in the database somewhere. You just aren't looking for the right place. Yeah, exactly. And also, yes, good point. If you post a query to the ComicBase message boards, oftentimes people will help you locate it. If you do want to go look for a comic book in general that you can't find, one good way to go, in particular, is so let's just take this comic book right on here, which might or might not be called The Forged, right? Because titles on the fronts of comic books are a terrible guide to whether or not they're really called that or not. But the tiny little writing on the inside here, right down at the bottom, right at the start of that is typically a number of bold words, and that's typically the publisher's official designation for the title. It's called the indicia. So whenever you're in doubt looking for anything that's in you're holding in your hands, yeah, definitely have a look at the indicia and see if that's really the title at all. Because a lot of times people will be looking at something like Buck Rogers in the 23rd century, or Buck Miller Western or whatever else, and you'll really find out that it's Del Four Color Comics presents Buck Miller Western or something like that. Yeah, a lot of times the title's a complete head fake, so don't let it fool you. Get used to checking the indicia when you're ever in doubt for what a particular thing is called. There's any number of other specialty titles, Dell Movie Giants, you name it. Yeah, comic books are full of this kind of nonsense, and I apologize on behalf of the comics industry to anyone who's ever had to look up a strange title like that, because man, there's more stuff that we have to put up with as comic collectors than you'll ever know. Let's see here. Zandu Comics asks, what is a ComicBase's definitive difference between a collector's preview and ash cans? So ash can's more of a historical term. Boy, that's a bad answer. Yeah, I mean, ash cans were like a real thing in the 1940s, and then they became the way that you put out like the preliminary version of your stuff, and then that kind of became briefly popular to call things ash cans. But then later on, a term called collector's preview came along. Typically, there's a big run of them in, I want to say, the 90s, where they would say, and now it's the Iron Man, Force Works collector's preview, in which case they would actually, use CP and call it collector's previews. That's another one in there. Typically, I'd say the way we answer it is, if the publisher called it collector's preview, we will tend to call it the collector's preview edition. If they didn't, it tends to be called the ash can edition, because ash can is more of an informal thing of generally it's been an informal thing of just saying, like, this is the one that wasn't quite ready for print, or it's not really the full version. It's kind of like the full version in its rough format. A collector's preview tends to be more of like almost like trade collateral that they put out for these sorts of things, but also typically they will say collector's preview, in which case, yeah, typically we'll say CP when that comes up. All right, let's see here. All nominal there. Okay, looks like things are doing okay there. Okay, I'm looking if there are any other things that are labeled at ComicBase TV, because I want to prioritize those things for the folks at the live stream. Okay. All right. Next question that I had someone send in is, how do I add a picture? This is a perennial one, and you guys probably know it. Oops, let me go to the right computer over here. All right, Death Comes to Nashville. Let's not use that one because it's not a real title. All right, but let me go ahead and pull up. Let's see. Let's just boy. All right, I need to give myself a picture of a comic book, and I don't want it to be weird. So let's see what I can dig up. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to say, hey, interwebs, find me a generic comic book cover. So nothing in particular. Yeah, let's just give me an image. Great. This, I couldn't have asked for better. This is as generic as I could possibly imagine. Okay. All right. And unfortunately, it's a WebP file, which are not useful at all. So, all right. Let me find something where it's actually like a actual JPEG. If I can save image as, nope. I want anything but a web. All right, I'm going to say JPEG. All right, if you guys are wondering what the heck I'm talking about, well, okay, that'll work. Okay, so I'm going to save this random generic comic book, which is a WebP. What the heck? No, this cannot be. All right, come on. This has got to just be like some kind of search thing. No, come on. All right. Okay, fine. I'm just going to screenshot it. Okay, so let's go into Paint. This is the joys of a brand new computer here. Okay, and let's go and I'm going to save this guy right here as a JPEG. There we go. Okay, generic. All right. So here's my generic comic book cover. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. And I got to save it onto my... Okay. All right, let's pretend that this wasn't like the lamest thing ever as far as a demo, but, you know, we got what we got. Okay, so I've got this image over here, which I've just saved down to my desktop, which is about as badly done as you can imagine, and I called it 1. Why did I call it 1? Because if I want to take the picture for any particular comic book and I want to add it to ComicBase, all I got to do really is I just name it the same as its issue number, make sure it's a JPEG, drag it over onto the title, and then boom, it then gets associated with the title, it gets filed in the right place, and there's my picture. If I wanted to save the thing for picture, for issue number 4, I'd call it number 4, drag it over, and then there's the picture for number 4. All right, where this gets a little bit interesting is, let's say I'm gonna, for issue number 3, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a new version of number 3. I'm gonna have a variant of Death Comes to Nashville, and so I went and I duplicated this the previous number 3, and now I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to say this is variation A. All right, and just go ahead and save that one. All right, so now I've got issue item numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 3A, 4, and 5. All right, so let's say I want to have an image for number 3A. Well, one problem we've got is that you can't actually have a title in Windows. You can't have a file named 3/A. And if you try to, it'll bark at you. So your file name can't contain any of the following characters, and it gives you a list. So what you do for any character that is, you need to put in, because that's part of the issue number, in particular the slash, you would just say 3-A. And at that point, if you take that issue, drag it over there, then that will get associated to, with that picture, and you're good to go. So that's how you would add your own pictures to any particular thing in ComicBase. It's pretty simple. If you like hunting down images on the interwebs, especially things that are very obscure variants or things like that we don't have, by all means, just go ahead and find them, save them, make sure they're in JPEG format, save them with the appropriate name for the item in question, drag them onto the title, and then if those are things that we don't have, if you right-click and say Submit New or Corrected Data, if you have an image that we don't have, it'll say, hey, there's an image there. Could we have it? Because we don't have a picture of that yet, in which case, it'll send it to us and it'll give you an additional point when you're submitting your corrections. But when you do that, please, a couple caveats on that. Number one, please, unlike these images, make sure they're cropped properly. Make sure the image looks nice, right? If the image has watermarks from saying that they belong to somebody else, please, we don't want them. We might want them, but we can't have them. So if they came from some comic store or whatever else, and they've got their imprint on that, please don't send them to us, because we just have to throw those out later on. So save everyone some trouble. And then I think that's about it. When you're scanning your own images, certainly it helps to have a nice quality copy of it. Go ahead and scan them as large as you want. 300 dpi is probably the practical limit to how big you ever want to go on those. But just scan them down nicely, save them into your copy of ComicBase, and then if you right-click and say submit new or corrected issues, then it comes up to us, and then we can also put those into the weekly update. And then finally, I'd say if you've got one of the lesser editions of ComicBase, such as, ComicBase Archive, you're using ComicBase Free or Express or Pro or something like that, and you really are spending a lot of time collecting images or hunting down images, I'm going to say consider moving up to the Archive Edition. The Archive Edition is separate from all the other editions in ComicBase, primarily in that, while the Pro does most of the same things Archive does in terms of the program features, in terms of the data that comes with the program, the Archive Edition has I do mean stupid numbers of pictures that come with it. I think at the current count, we're at something at 985,000 images that we've collected over 30-some years of doing this, that we will then make available to everyone who uses the Archive Edition. They can download covers. New covers come out every week as we push new content and so forth. It is a ridiculous amount of data. It's incredibly expensive for us to, get all this together and host it and serve it and everything else. So it does cost more than, the cheaper editions. But if you find that, managing images is a big thing in your life, it's worth the upgrade, or at least, it's worth having a serious look at. Because a lot of times, especially these days, I think last time we looked, it was something like 82% of all comic books published last month were a variant of one sort or another. And just having that photo reference for all those stupid numbers of variants. So you can say, oh yeah, the one where Red Sonja is holding the sword up and the person's charging at her with the battle axe. Just being able to say, yeah, it's that cover, as opposed to saying, is that the J edition or the K edition? It really makes your life easier. So yeah, worth a look. Okay. And I think that is everything I wanted to say on that question. ComicBase Ashcan. Oh, kids. I'm not even going to comment on that one because it's funny, and because we have actually a surprise coming up for you guys in the future, and you'll see. All right. So let's see here. Okay, next question. So it's this is kind of a perennial for us, especially for people coming in from more of the hobbyist programs. Is how do I see just my stuff? All right. So here's kind of like where that question comes from, and I'll give you a little bit of background on, and before I just give you the blindingly obvious answers. All right. So So what happens is people get ComicBase and they launch it, and they say, "Wow, there's a lot of titles here." I mean, it's Batman and Robin. There's 10 trillion titles of Batman and Robin. Or if I just type Batman, you can scroll on and on and on and just see a million different things. Batman from all around the world, Batman from Germany, Batman album, Batman aliens, etc. But you look at all these ones and say, but I don't own any Batman aliens comics. I mean, hey, how do I just see my comics, right? And it's a completely valid question. And the answer is, let me go ahead and I'm just going to put a couple of these in stock. It's a brand new database. So I'm just going to I'm giving myself a little bit of inventory to show. All right. So by default, if I went to the Batman album by Planet Comics, which apparently ran from 1976 to 1980, must have been some kind of reprint series. So we're showing all the issues, right, from 32, 33, 34, etc. And the reason you show them all is because it makes it very easy for you not only to have the reference date on it, but also for you to say, okay, look, I want to go ahead and put those in myself. Oh, that's interesting. These ones seem like they alternate between Australian and US dollars. I'm very curious about that now. Anyway, so what happens with Batman album or whatever else is typically we're going to show it all, just like this. But if you want to see just your stuff, your stuff by default, as soon as you have quantity not equal to 0, you notice that your stuff all gets highlighted in this kind of brighter color. It depends on whatever theme you've got going on, but it makes it usually kind of pop yours out. When you're browsing around for titles, you have a choice there when you're showing titles. Say, do I want to show everything? In which case, give it a second to redraw. Or do I want to show just the series in stock? And if I say, if I say just, just show the series in stock and everything, it's going to limit, what I show to just, just my stuff. Sorry, I didn't wait around for it. Because again, if you sit there and say, show me all the Batman, it takes forever. But typically, it's a nice confidence builder to say, yeah, I entered some stuff. I don't want to see all the stuff in the database. I just want to see my stuff. It's a nice confidence builder to do that one. Sometimes, in which case, there's a couple of quick ways to do it. One is under here, under the view menu, if you say items to show, and instead of saying all items, if you just say owned items, then suddenly when I'm looking at a title like Batman album, it's only going to show my Batman album. If I go forward or back, it's going to scroll and it's only going to show you, titles you actually own, right? So now it goes between Batman Aliens, Batman and Robin, and so forth. And so it's a much smaller list than it would be if I wasn't, showing everything in the database. The problem with doing it this way, unfortunately, is what do you have ComicBase out for most of the time? And the answer is you're mostly using it to add stuff to your collection. I mean, that's most of us most of the time. I mean, things can be different in different people, but in order to add things to your collection, you actually want to be showing the stuff you don't have and then putting into your stock. So narrowing your view so you're only showing the stuff you own, occasionally interesting, but not typically the way you want to go about it. Another way, by the way, if you want to just show just things I own, click over here under the find. And the very first find you'll see on the list is just my comics, or if you're under books, you'll see my books or so forth. And if I just say find my comics, boom, okay, here's a list of just the comics I put into my inventory. So, okay, I got a big list of my comics, but not super useful by itself. Yeah, typically when we get the question, so how do I show just my stuff? Some of it is I don't really get the metaphor of why are you showing me all this other stuff that I don't own yet? And the answer is so it becomes easier for you to refer to, and so that you can, so you can add new things. That's the main reason that we default to showing you everything. But then the other thing is sometimes it's like hey, look, I put some stuff in. I just want to be able to see what I've entered. In which case, the question I would say, once you've kind of convinced yourself that ComicBase is paying attention and it is storing your data, so when I mark the quantity as being from 0 to 1, it is actually paying attention. As soon as I go to the next field, it's recorded that at keystroke. Once you've kind of like gotten confident with that, the main thing you'll really be asking yourself is, well, why do I want to see, what I've got? And in particular, like, am I trying to say what's all the stuff I entered worth? Am I just trying to see a big list of what I've got? Is this a list that I want to, use as a checklist so I can find the things I'm missing? Is it a list I want to go that I want to, bring as a price list? So, when I want to sell my collection to somebody. So, I mean, kind of start with like what you have in mind for like the end of what you're looking for. At which case, usually I find a big list of just my stuff is easily the least useful way that I will ever view my own collection. Typically, when I'm looking for, well, what's the list of my stuff? For me, maybe this is just me. My first question is, well, what's my stuff worth, right? At which point, you want to go to different places in the program for the sorts of answers you're looking for. So, the very first place, if I'm just saying, well, what's all my stuff that I've entered worth? I'm going to go under the file menu, and my go-to is collection statistics, because it's the very, very quickest way to just say, yeah, here's everything I've got, and here's what it's worth. So I've entered so far, just fiddling around with the database, just while we're on the live stream now, I've entered it in 21 DC comics, 2 DC Dark Horse comics, 5 Image comics, 3 Planet comics, total value of $202.70. There's a total of 31 comics entered. They're all unique. My asking price is whatever, my markup, blah, blah, blah. Lots of stats on the whole thing. And in my real collection, this is obviously not my real collection, printing this report off and giving it to my insurance agent is my number one way of establishing the value of my collection that I typically go for, because it's very quick, it's very compact. Now, if you're looking for more of a more elaborate statement of what I've got, it's like I want to carry around a list of my stuff on my book in a binder or something else like that. At that point, then some of the reports up here are probably where you want to go and look for for your solution. And I'd say in general, you want to say, well, again, what is the purpose of doing the printout? All right, so if you want just sort of like a nice, pretty version of your entire report, then collection report is my go-to on this one. Let's go ahead and preview this. And that's what this would look like. So if I took the 31 comic books that I entered in, I just print them all out with pictures. There they are, right? And this is nice, except you'll quickly find out that with, as you go down things, that you're starting to get, as soon as you get a serious collection, you're also starting to talk about a really serious amount of paper. And that might not be the best way to go if you start having 5, 10, 50,000 comic books. Then you're rarely going to want to print that off, or even as a PDF or anything. Typically, there's another way to get the things you want that'll get, be more effective for what you want. For me personally, if I'm looking to just archive a list of everything in my collection in something and I want to be able to transmit it to other people or so forth, for me, the export command, where I just export certain fields from the issues in my collection, and I can save that as a very, very small text file. That's typically where I go more often than not. But play around with reports, but like I say, ask yourself, what data am I trying to get out of this, other than I'm just proving myself that it's kept track of what I've got. But what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to establish value? Am I trying to fill in gaps? Because there's probably a report that's more tailored to the exact thing you're trying to do than just a big list. Is, I guess, that's the lengthy way of saying what I would want to say with that. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so we got that. All right, and let's see here. And the last one I'm going to do. I'm sorry. The last point I want to say about the how do I see just what I want? And I don't think I might. No time like the present to set this up. What the heck? But if you have the archive edition, and let's go ahead. This is a brand new computer, and let's go to screensavers. Change screensaver. And come on, baby. You can do it. Screensaver. There you are. So, one of the things that comes with the archive edition, which is just pretty darn cool, is it comes with this screensaver called the ComicBase Cover Gallery. And what you can do with it, and I'm going to go ahead and set this so it's not running all the time, but you can choose what you want to see in the screensaver. You can say, for instance, do I want to show my comics, my books, my my movies? But you also can say only show owned items. And if you do that, then when it runs the screensaver, you're actually getting a screensaver of just the comic books in your collection, which is pretty darn cool. And which, if I try this on a brand new machine that I just installed quick pictures on, will probably look terrible. But let's see if I can kick this off anyway. So, because nothing like trying something live in a demo that you're not sure will work. Well, there you go. That's not too bad. But yeah, in theory, this screensaver is only showing me the things in my collection. And that's not actually a bad way of going and just kind of enjoying the stuff you've got. So yeah, let that roll. And so, kind of a cool way to go. I'll just throw that out there. That one is also one of the things, because of the huge number of covers involved, is only applies to the archive edition users. So Pro and Express, users, this does not apply. But again, another good reason you might want at some point treat yourself to the archive. All right. Last question I've got here is, and we got this one just a couple hours before showtime. Poor guy. And I wish I could say that, he's, this never happens to anyone except him, but it does. He's just like, I was entering my comic books and now they're all gone. And he was, of course, he's happening after hours. And he's not calling, and he posts it to the Facebook page, which is not a great place to go for tech support. We're like a lot of small companies. Facebook is basically our brochureware, and it's our way of, kind of saying hi to everyone. But if you want tech support for ComicBase, or you want to interact with humans in a, non-chatty, like actual real substantive way, honest to God, just give us a call, man. We're around. Just our phone number's everywhere. 408-266-6883, or, sales or support at comicbase.com. We're happy to chat with you anytime. Facebook, yeah, we check on it once in a while. So please don't post your urgent tech support there. It's not the best place. But back to his original question was, like, he's saying, yeah, look, I entered a bunch of comic books and I don't see them now, and I just don't want to have to enter them all again. What do I do? All right. If you should ever find this is happening to you, I'll tell you with 99% certainty, what has really happened is you were entering your comic books in one database, and then you started doing work out of a different database. It's It's all it's the same thing would happen if you were like writing one version of a letter to my grand master thesis on the theory of everything. You save it as a Word file, and then you open another one called my thesis, and you type some other thoughts into that one. If you then open it later and you don't remember which one was your current one, you'll suddenly be like, oh my God, I threw out all my work. It's the same deal. So in ComicBase, all your data is stored in a file that lives on your computer. And by default, it's called ComicBase Database.cbdb, which stands for Comic Base Database. And that lives in your documents folder. Inside a folder called Human Computing. Inside there's a folder called ComicBase Databases. And that's where that file lives on your hard drive. It is a local file on your hard drive. Matter of fact, we can go ahead and look right now and see what that looks like. So if I go to Documents, inside there is Human Computing. Inside there is ComicBase Databases. And there's my file right there with every single thing that I've entered. Now, if I go and I create a new database, and like I call it like Pete's Comics, right? Anything I enter in Pete's Comics is in Pete's Comics. It's not in ComicBase Database. They're separate files, right? And if I switch between them and I kind of, get distracted or phone rings or whatever else, and I kind of lose that I was working in one file and I suddenly switch to the other one, the work that was in the one file is not in the other file. So you want to find the right file. So there's a couple things I'd say about the whole process. And number one, first of all, I understand it's alarming if it looks like, hey, where's my work? Your work is safe. Don't calm down. It'll all be good. You just got to open the right file. Now, a couple of things. One is if you're ever confused about what the right file is, there's a utility we include with ComicBase. If you go under the File menu in ComicBase, go to File Tools, and then go down here to the ComicBase Database Manager. This guy right here. If you click this guy right here, what it's going to do is it's going to exit ComicBase and it's going to launch a separate program, which all this program does is it searches every folder on your hard drive and finds all your ComicBase databases and then tells you what's in each one and then lets you say, oh yeah, hey, let me use that database, not the database I've been using beforehand. It lets you, if you rearrange things, you rename folders, you rename files, it can't find your old database, whatever the thing is, it lets you find your right database and say, oh yeah, I meant to use this one. So, like I said, you're not alone if this happened to you. It's a common thing for people to kind of get, confused about. So don't feel bad about it, but also don't freak out. I mean, because your data is safe. It's still there. You just need to open the right database. The other thing I would say is if, is points of prevention, right? In general, so when you first launch ComicBase, it makes a new database called ComicBase Database stored in the default location, right? Nothing special about it. You'll just say it says, preparing database for first use, and it just goes off to the races, right? You don't need to create multiple copies of your database unless you've got some very special reason to. So for instance, you'll notice if you go to the File menu, there's no save command because everything's always saved. The second you exit a field, it's already saved your data. There is a thing called save a copy, where if I want to make a separate copy of my database, I could make a copy someplace else. But don't get into a habit of thinking like I need to go and make a lot of different saves or a lot of different copies of my database, because honestly, for most people, unless you're doing it for some very special reason, like you're managing 3 people's collections or something like that, it's just going to lead to confusion, and that kind of leads to the frantic calls, which typically people are. It's not fun for anyone, not fun for you, and certainly not fun for us as well, because you're usually pretty freaked out when you make the call because it feels like your data is not where you expected, and it looks like it was thrown out. But don't have multiple databases unless you've got a reason. If you've got multiple databases, or if you've got a custom database, it doesn't hurt to leave it named just ComicBase Database. The reason for that is if your database is called ComicBase Database and it's in the regular place, in your documents folder, inside Human Computing, and inside your ComicBase Databases folder, if you've called it that and you ever reset your preferences or you ever do something to completely reset your whole computer, it's always going to look there first. And so, it'll always find your data, because you've called it the default thing. If you decide you want to call your database something other than that, or you want to store it someplace differently, that's all cool. You're allowed to do that. Just, it's up to you. You got to remember where it is. And if you don't remember where it is, use the database manager to go find it. And then finally, I'd say if you are one of those rare people who does need to actually manage more than one database as part of what you do, I mean, say you've got one database which is yours, and other databases which is your kids, stuff who's over college, and you thinking, you're keeping up to them for them because you're a nice guy. Not a bad idea to take those two different databases and give them different themes. That way, so if you go into the file menu and you go to theme, if I might make my main database be, say, blue, but I make my kids' database be, purple or orange or something like that, then the second I open up the orange database, I know I'm working in the other database, right? If I open up and it's blue, then I know I'm working in my database. And it's a really good, clue to give myself to say, like, oh, right, that's why I don't see my data, because I entered it into the other one. Because a lot of times just the idea that, like, you only see the name of the database up top here, the active database is always going to be in parentheses at the top. That could be too subtle. A lot of people will kind of forget, yeah, I was working in ComicBase database. Then I decided, I'm going to make it Bob's database. And then I kind of forgot where I was. If you remember, I always work in the purple database, then there's never a doubt, and it will save a lot of trouble. So anyway, that would be my advice if you're in these kinds of things. All right, well, that's all I have for now. Let me just do a quick check of the chat, make sure there's nothing else here. Oh, by the way, as our mod wants to go PSA, by the way, please remember to hit the like and subscribe. And also, please post notes to the ComicBase message forum, because that gives us topics for what we talk about from week to week. And I think, and also there's a link to Andre's ComicBase cover catalog, which is an insanely impressive effort. It's basically, imagine if you were crazy enough to print out all the covers of every cover that's in the archive edition, but you could actually see all those comic books in one humongous tome as PDF. By the way, and I think Greta Thunberg comes directly to your house and scowls at you if you dare print this, because you probably killed a rainforest by yourself if you do that. But anyway, save this as PDF, people. But it is still a very cool thing to say. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it for now. You guys have a terrific time. I'll see you on the next one. And until then, have a good one. Bye-bye.